everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 158. We have our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Dan Pompa, on the line, of course. And today we welcome back our amazing team member, Aaron Smith, out in California. Super excited to have Aaron on the show today. We've got Aaron back because we have a hot topic for you guys. So we talk a lot about fasting on Cellular Healing TV. You know, goodness knows, Dr. Pompa, you've talked a lot about fasting over the years. So this is not a new topic. However, there's constantly an onslaught of questions that we all receive about fasting. Always. People wondering, right, Dr. Pompa, you get it all the time.
All the time.
All the time. So we thought this would be a great opportunity for the three of us who are all live and lead the lifestyle, and we implement fasting a lot into our lifestyle, and to discuss it on the show and to kind of delve into the ins and outs of it. And so there will be one show, one place that can be a great reference tool for your clients or for any of you out there who are watching the show and just want to learn more about fasting, whether you're just kind of sticking your toe in the water and beginning your fasting journey and implementing it into your life, or you've been practicing fasting for a long time, because there's always nuances and tweaks that we want to incorporate throughout our health journey. So this show is serving the purpose of answering a lot of the questions that we get on a daily basis to kind of answer about fasting. So, and how you guys doing, by the way? Before we jump into questions, what's going on?
It's awesome. It's 75 in California, so it's pretty cool.
It's always snowy here. We actually, it's a sunny blue sky day. It's either snowing in Park City or it's blue sky. So today it's blue sky.
And gray and rainy here in Pittsburgh, probably about 30 degrees, but not complaining. I'm on the show with you beautiful people, and we're sharing this amazing information, so life is good. All right, so let's get started. We thought we'd kind of move from simple to complex, because perhaps you're listening or you're watching and you haven't begun implementing fasting into your life yet, but you're curious about it. So for those of you who are out there who have not started to implement fasting at all, Dr. Pompa, where would one start? Would it be wise to just kind of start to practice intermittent fasting on a daily basis, which is kind of eating within that compressed time window? Or is it wise to kind of just jump in and do a longer block fast as kind of a jump start? So where would someone start?
It's a hard question to answer, because it really depends on the person, right? I mean, somebody that has a more serious health condition, oftentimes they don't have a choice. I mean, they literally have to jump into a fast. However, the majority of people watching this, starting with some intermittent fasting, which simply means, continuing a fast, through the evening, into the morning, 13 to 24 hours. That's an intermittent fast daily. And I think that's the place to start. It gets you used to it. It gets your cells a little more ready for fat burning, or a little more adapted to using fat for energy.
Mm-hmm. So maybe they'd stop eating at like 8 p.m. at night, and then maybe kind of wait to have like an early lunch at 11 a.m. or so. Would that be a reasonable starting window? Yeah,
no, absolutely. And, and one thing that we will talk about too is, I think intermittent fasting can be more easily defined as your eating window. If you're fasting, whatever amount of hours, you could say, well, I'm going to eat in a 6-hour window, and that's when you eat. So, I mean, I think that window can be adjusted depending on your schedule, depending on who you are. And I think it's, certainly better at certain times for some people over others. Eating too close to bed is not good. I mean, 3 or 4 hours before bed. So, adjust your window according to that. But some people maybe do better from eating from 10 a.m., to, 4 p.m., or 11 to 5, and, 5 being dinner, first meal at 11. So, I mean, I think there's some room for adjusting when you eat. So there's nothing hardcore. The idea is, if you're going at least 13, 14, 15, 16, 18 hours, fasting without food, that's when you get the growth hormone rise, the benefits, the hormone sensitivity. And we talked a lot about this on other shows. Hormone optimization occurs in the fast, period.
Well, and we get this all the time. So of course, this makes sense as a logical follow-up. So with intermittent fasting, if that would be the place to start, Is it just wise to just do water within that fasting window, or can they have a bulletproof coffee, for instance, which would be a coffee blended with grass-fed butter, or perhaps some coconut cream or raw heavy cream in their coffee or tea? Or is it really just important to kind of have that water to get the most benefit from the fast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking over at this book right here. Thomas Seyfried, I learned something from him, right? I mean, they're fasting many people with cancer, very serious conditions. And, what they found as long as that, the glucose doesn't get spiked, then, having that little bit of coffee or tea can be okay. So we kind of use that as a determinant. So some people can drink coffee and a half hour later, their glucose spikes. I would say that is absolutely bad. So, that's definitely not good, right? So we don't want glucose to rise up. Yeah, that happens to you, right? And then some people can add some fats and say, oh, that actually worked a little better. Some people, the fats actually spike them. So everyone's a little different, but typically I would say just eating nothing is the best thing to do. But I think having that warm beverage definitely can help people. And, in his book, he talks about some people do better with tea than coffee, definitely try. But if it doesn't spike your glucose levels, you can test it several days in a row. Then I would say, all right, that little bit of tea with a little bit of cream is fine. But if you're eating fats throughout the fasting window, I think you're missing the point of the fast. So I don't think that's good. I think we just want to rest our digestion. That little bit of cream or MCT oil or whatever you're using. I think for most people, you're still going to get the benefits of the fast, but I wouldn't do that throughout the day. And again, it could be different for everybody. So test.
Really important point. And with the testing too, Aaron, if you want to explain that a little bit more, and if you're listening for the first time, you're thinking, well, what is testing? So we're referring to testing your blood sugar and your ketones, and this would be with a blood meter. Dr. Pompa typically recommends the Precision Extra blood meter, where you buy the different strips. There's ketone strips and blood sugar glucose strips, where you actually prick your finger, get the blood, and then you would test your blood sugar, typically on a fasted stomach. First thing in the morning, you would test your blood sugar and your ketones, and then typically about 30 minutes or so, Dr. Pompa, after your coffee or tea, with or without sugar or cream, to check that rise to see if your blood sugar is spiking after that. And if it is in fact spiking, then perhaps that morning beverage isn't doing you any favors.
Yeah, exactly. And then, it just even to determine, your length of fast, especially for beginners, because some people can't go 20 hours, 18 hours because their glucose will start to rise. So then we can see, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my glucose actually starts to go up. That's gluconeogenesis. So that would be a time to break the fast before that occurs. So we can also look to see, how long to fast. Now, caution, it does change. I mean, as you become more efficient, you're able to go longer, because ultimately, here's what we want: glucose to drop throughout the fast and ketones to rise. Is an indicator that your body's using its fat for energy, making ketones, and the glucose to drop. And this is an important point. I don't want to get too deep because we have a lot of questions, but you get the benefit of ketones when the glucose goes down. People's glucose that rises up, your ketones may still be in ketosis, but you're not getting the benefits of the ketones without the lower glucose. So that's why we look at that. But let's not complicate it. Intermittent fasting, eventually your body really does get more efficient at it. I've seen that with my wife. I'm always asked this question: is it harder for women? It's amazing when I ask that question to others, that we've interviewed on the show, and they always answer no. But yet I have found clinically, and we have the advantage of having several hundred doctors to work with, that we would all answer yes. It is a little more difficult with women, especially women in certain hormonal places, and especially thyroid. And, but that doesn't mean you can't. You just have to know how to adjust the window and get someone more efficient at this process.
Aaron, I know you kind of had an interesting experience with drinking coffee with different fats in it. And do you want to kind of share your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing the coffee with the butter and the fat for a while, and I was always testing my ketones, but then I added in the glucose meter, and that completely changed everything, because it really doesn't matter if your glucose is high. So I started really just targeting and being really just zoning in on on my glucose. And I would test coffee by itself. I'd test coffee with cream. I'd test coffee with butter and coconut oil. I would test just coconut butter. I would test, you know, just a range of things, even taking the energy bits that we like, and a couple other products that I have, just because I've been in the supplement world for so long. You know, there's so many cool things you can take, and almost all of them I had a glucose spike, and that was my question is, you know, I was at 75, went up to 86. You know, what is that a safe range? Is that that's no good? You know, the point range, I know 75 to 80 is the targeted range that you want to be in for glucose and ketones, right? But if you have a little bit of fat and then it spikes it up 10, but then it drops, is that okay? Or should you just not do it at all if it spikes it by 10?
Yeah, I would go without. If you're rising consistently on average 5 or 10, I would say that your body's, going to do better without it. You're going to get more out of your fast without it. Maybe you try some chamomile tea, because I see a difference, with coffee versus tea oftentimes, definitely fat versus non-fat. Whereas when I tested that myself, this was probably a year ago, and I was kind of with cream, without cream, black coffee, didn't make much of a difference. I stayed about the same. I tested recently now, and I have a bunch of numbers written down here on my desk even somewhere, but I'm noticing that with the cream I actually drop, and in black coffee drops me a little bit, but with cream I drop even more. So that's a switch from where I was before, but it shows that I can get away with it. With black coffee or not, doesn't matter. So everyone's different, and it does change. So testing is important. How much it affects the fast, I don't think we know. I'm relying on looking, what their Thomas Seyfried's, what they're saying is, look, we don't want to see that glucose go up. I get that, because here's the thing. Number one, it nullifies the benefits of the ketones to a certain point. Number two, we know that it can take you out of autophagy, where the body starts to get rid of bad cells. Remember, he and others, they're trying to hit a target range where the glucose gets down to a certain point and the ketones rise. And we know that bad cells die. They don't adapt in that time. So I think you can throw it out of that, for what time, it's too early to tell, but again, this is just a simple way that we use, with clients, and our doctors do this to determine the length, or if they're able to have that nice beverage in the morning. So test again, Aaron, as you get more fat adapted. I believe my findings that, you can tolerate more things without seeing the glucose rise.
Yeah, I have noticed that, because I'm doing Meredith inspired me to do this, but like a 4-day block fast once a month, and for the whole year. I did that for 2016, and I definitely got better as the year went on, and I could get into ketosis so fast after just going in and out of fasting, and it was amazing, and but I now I think my resting glucose was at 85 one day, and I had some coconut butter and it dropped down to 75, so it's just interesting, the changes and the shifts that you see, but it's just so critical and fascinating, and how that can just affect so many things. So I'm very grateful for that. And now I've done so many fasts that it's like I feel I like crave it once a month, It's really interesting how your body needs it. But one of my questions is the level of glucose for autophagy. We don't really know, but it's the 75 to 80 target range is what we want to go for, right?
Well, no, because it's really, you're comparing ketones to glucose. And if you convert your glucose, I'm going to lose people here, so I don't want to get too technical, but if you convert to millimolars per liter instead of deciliter, then you get more of a European number for the glucose, like 4.8, 3.0 versus 80, for example. And then you compare it to the ketones that are already in that, right? And they strive for a 1-to-1 ratio. But look, ultimately what we're saying is we want that glucose a little lower. We want it, if you're between 55 and 65 on the glucose and your ketones are 2 to 3 or 4, then you definitely hit that target zone. You're definitely experience a lot of bad cells dying, so that's more of the range, just kind of understanding where your glucose is without the conversion. But yeah, so we want to see the glucose drop. We want to see the ketones rise. Bad cells don't make that adaptation, they die. So look, that's one benefit of fasting. The other benefit is that you become very more hormone sensitive. Your cells are learning how to adapt to utilizing fat for energy. You said it, with each fast, I always say with each fast you get healthier. No one gets healthier with one fast, but your body's now, you're able to go into ketosis like that, right? I was out of ketosis the majority of the summer. It took me 2 days to get back into ketosis. You know, I was done. I could go out of ketosis for a week and be back in it. Boom, just like that. Now, you know, that's because we've done intermittent fasting for years. We've, you know, block fasting, etc. The cells get healthy. Take this home right here, those listening. You want to test how healthy you are at the cellular level, go without food, and you will find out how healthy you are. If you don't, you know, dizzy, irritable, I need to eat, okay, you've got a cellular problem at the mitochondria. You know, what's the fix? Fasting, like we're talking about, intermittent daily, periodic block fasting, whether it's a block fast once a month, every other month, whatever it is, each fast, you get healthier.
Mm-hmm. Woo! Well, we just delved in very deeply there in the beginning of the show.
Oh,
bring it back a little bit, but we'll continue the deep conversation. There's so much to talk about. And Aaron, I do love that you fasted in 2016, 4 days a month, or 4 days a month. I was going to do that too. I made it through April. So, but I'm glad that you carried on, girl. That's amazing and very, very, very awesome to do. So, okay, so let's bring it back though, because I get this question a lot too. Can anyone fast? What about kids, teenagers, women trying to conceive, the elderly? I mean, can anybody do it? We kind of think from a primal perspective, well, people didn't used to have, you know, access to food 24/7, so they were forced to, but is it wise for everyone to fast these days just because you can? Dr. Pompa, what's the answer?
Well, look, I mean, when we look at an ancient culture, obviously everyone was forced to fast, right? I'm sure they probably gave the food that they have mostly to the kids, right? You know, I don't think, you know, a healthy kid, does he need to fast? I would say no. I would say even a perfectly healthy adult, do they need to fast? No. I think intermittent fasting daily, you know, you can still get enough benefits. And that's what, like when I went to Africa, I mean, they fasted every day. Everyone in the whole culture, that's just what they did. The men went out to hunt, the women gathered, they ate, they came back for one big meal a day. So technically they fasted every day and the whole community did. You know, but block fasting for sure is, you know, something that some cultures were forced to do. The Hunza people, it's called starvation spring. The American Indians, you know, they were in and out of fasting modes all the time. So our DNA is set to fast. So technically anybody can fast, right? Even when we look at the concentration camps, when we look at what happened to the kids and adults, they got healthier. You know, fasting, amazing things happen. Does everyone need to fast? Not necessarily. I think that intermittent fasting daily could be enough for the average person. But if you have a condition, you know, I think block fasting, longer fast can be transformative. We've seen that. Multiple block fast is a way to optimize your hormones, you know, fix mitochondria, bad cells die, all these good things we're talking about happen. So, you know, so the answer is everyone can. Does everyone need to? Not necessarily, but I'll tell you, if you have a health condition, it's transformative.
Mm-hmm. So true. And well, so this is a natural transition then into talking a lot more about block fast. So can you explain what they are a little bit more for maybe someone who's just tuning in for the first time? What does that look like? How long is it typically lasting? And then what are you consuming, if anything, during the block fast?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that when we talk a block fast, I like to say for 4 days on. Now, why 4 days? You know, because I think, you know, a lot of people did like always 3-day fast. And I never understood that, because the magic happens day 4. So why would you stop at day 3? It takes you this 3 days to where this efficiency occurs. You know, so most of the healing occurs, you know, in that last day, you know. So I think you get that benefit by that 4th day. So minimum 4 days. And of course, you know, moving beyond that. I mean, do you get benefits day 1? Of course you do. I mean, studies show that. I mean, intermittent fasting even for 1 day, right? But, you know, day 2 and day 3 then can be the rough days. So, I mean, we know that. Day 1 can be, you know, okay. If you're sick, then even day 1 could be hard. But most people can do 1 day. The day 2 and day 3 is hard. Don't stop there. You want that 4th day. And then again, at that point, you want to break a fast very slowly, very soft foods. And I like to even move into what I call partial fast, where they're not exceeding 500 calories in an intermittent fasting. So eating that maybe in a 4-hour window for a few more days, and then the healing even continues. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, the way I see it as far as the length and, you know, how to break it. There's a simple solution.
And I have a question to add to that, Dr. Pompa.
Okay.
Question is, why is it so important to come out of the fast slowly? Because I made it 5.5 days and I didn't break in so easily. And I was, you know, I was like, I'm done. I need to, like, my body feels ready to eat, even though there's some days where I'm like, I don't need to eat for 100 days. I feel so great. But I just came to a point where, due to my schedule and traveling, I was ready to eat. But, you know, why is that so critical? Because I think you get, sometimes you're so hungry to eat that you can overdo it, you know, when you're coming back out of a fast. And I think it's
in a
critical.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a fast, you have to understand physiologically what's happening. You know, your digestive enzymes start to, you know, back down, right? So your body's not ready to be hit with a big meal. You simply won't assimilate it. You won't break it down. You have to engage the digestion again very slowly. Neurologically, it's slowed down. The less digestive enzymes. The microbiome hasn't recolonized yet. So, you know, all of that says break a fast slowly. I think the other question I get is how much people like you, Aaron, you know, you don't want to slow down. You're exercise enthusiast, you know, so they want to exercise. No, fasting is a time to rest. Rest your body, let it heal. You know, there's a time for, you know, it's feast or famine, right? There's a time for feasting, there's a time for famine. And that's what we're emulating here. There's a time for hard work and there's a time for rest. Fasting is a time for rest.
Yep. And I actually saw more results when I fasted than when I did working out hard, you know, just because your body can heal and repair. So it's pretty fascinating. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good point. And with block fasting, typically, what do you suggest there, Dr. We get this a lot. Should I just use water? Should I do bone broth? You guys talk a lot about probiotic whey water. What, you know, it would be the best option, and what are there different benefits to eat?
Well, you know, I mean, I think there's benefits. You know, bone stock has, you know, multiple different things in it that make a fast maybe a little easier. And so does whey water that you mentioned. They have electrolytes. And people have sometimes a hard time fasting because of electrolyte depletion. So there's a benefit to starting with one of those easier fasts. Whey water gives you some energy, so you don't get that first couple days with that massive glucose drop before you start producing enough ketones where you feel good. So it's going to be easier for people with that. But with that said, you don't get the massive drop in glucose and therefore the surge of ketones. So you kind of miss that benefit. So, you know, I think if you're a beginner, it's easier to do a beef stock fast or a whey water fast. I think whey water is the easiest, then beef stock, and then water is probably the hardest just from a psychological standpoint. There's nothing warm. There's nothing. I mean, you could drink some, you know, non-caffeinated tea, but you still don't have that something. So, but I think from honestly, when you water fast, you lose your hunger after a couple days. You start sparing your protein, forcing ketones up. So I think, you know, in some ways it's easier, but psychologically it's harder. So anyways, there's some benefits to all of them, as you said.
Yeah. So true. Just from personal experience, when I first started with the company and met you, Dr. Pompa, I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm trying the fasting. So I started with the probiotic whey water fast. Couldn't believe how easy that was. And that was for 4 days. After that, graduated to the bone stock fast and struggled with that a little bit more. And then it psychologically, you know, built up to doing the water fast, which I have to say was really, I think, the most profound thing I've ever done for my health was doing a water fast. And I did 4 days water and then about 2 more days broth and then transitioned back into food. But there, I just have to say there's nothing more profound to me in my whole life physically than doing a water fast.
Yeah. Healing occurs. You know, I mean, animals fast instinctively when they're sick or hurt to speed up the healing process. Humans, well, we need to be taught. I mean, you know, since every historical document talks about the need of fasting for spiritual healing, physical healing, and emotional healing. You know, rarely do we talk about the emotional healing part of fasting, but there is one. Look at just fasting and depression. You'd be stunned at the studies. Well, why is that? Because hormone optimization. You know, you get more hormone sensitive. You start to produce, all types of different neurotransmitters that you are producing. Remember, in a fast, you're adjusting the microbiome. That's our bacteria that we even need to make immune cells and our brain chemicals so we feel and, think normal. All of that, magically can really solve a lot of those problems during fasting. The innate intelligence does the healing during fasting, not a doctor. That's the best part.
Quick question too. I think just for some women my age, possibly who are trying to conceive or who are in that kind of reproductive age, is it wise to do a water fast? Would that affect our fertility?
Well, I mean, look, the water fasting is a natural healing. So I wouldn't be trying to get pregnant during the fast, but I would say, on the front side of that, I would think, no doubt, I would say it's a great thing to do, and arguably, I would say, after a fast, you're, more fertile.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Well, and to kind of pick back on that, we had gotten a great question in. How does fasting affect gut bacteria? You've mentioned a lot about the microbiome, and it's an interesting point.
One thing that we've utilized, to fix dysbiosis, meaning too many bad guys, not enough good guys. You can't throw enough good bacteria at a gut to fix it. We know that. However, when you fast, you starve down all bacteria. And then after a fast, we start eating fibrous foods, which starts feeding the good guys. And the bad guys now don't have a chance. And we could even start eating some fermented foods, which we love breaking fast with. And that starts to raise up new colonies of bacteria. So you starve them all down, and then the good ones are able to get the advantage. Instead of just having too many bad and not enough good, trying to build up the good, is almost impossible. So we starve them down, and then we re-inoculate after a fast. It's a great way to fix bacteria. And yes, more and more studies are showing fasting, again, bad cells don't adapt. Bad bacteria have trouble adapting to fasting. So, the good ones survive. So we know that the microbiome is being affected in a majorly positive way during a fast. I don't even think we understand it all yet, but will.
Well, one of my questions to add to that would be, how many days should you eat fermented vegetables after a fast? Because, me and that fermented yogurt, I could eat that, 24/7. But is there like a good time frame to put the good bacteria back in?
Yeah, and that's a real fermented yogurt. Aaron's talking there. So that's really good stuff. Yeah, unlike most of the yogurts you buy in the grocery store, right? But right. I mean, I think that there's no limit to the days. I mean, you can just add it back in. I would say it this way. I would say I would do it at least for the same number of days you fasted. Where you try to purposely, get those bacteria in. So if you fasted for 4 days, purposely try to eat 4 days of some good colonized, dairy products that's real dairy, not commercial dairy, and fermented vegetables, etc. So no doubt.
Just like you said, that rotation is key. So not just one fermented product, whether it's just the yogurt, but perhaps some fermented, vegetables like the carrots, or you can get wonderful sauerkraut, kimchi, some kefir. There's, that variety of bacteria is so important because especially when it's raw and unpasteurized, you don't, all of those bacteria are different. So you're really diversifying your flora to really promote microbiome health. So it's important to just really have that mix too of the foods, even though that yogurt is so darn good, Erin. It really, it is addicting. That's good stuff.
And don't forget about just fiber. Fiber feeds the good guys, and obviously fiber's vegetables, but, other sources, some chia seed, flax or soaked flax seed. And, the seeds bring in some good fiber too, so we want, multiple different types of fiber will feed the good guys.
And that's the prebiotic and the probiotic bacteria as well. It's or the prebiotic fibers, maybe like the psyllium husk and the Jerusalem artichoke or a green plantain, or kind of some of those prebiotics as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That mix. So great. This is great. We get this all the time. Is it a good idea to practice fasting in conjunction with the ketogenic diet?
Yeah, I think it's a wicked combination for the good. Because one of the things we know is, people, hey, you can be in ketosis and still, not be losing weight, right? And I said, glucose is very important. If your glucose isn't dropping, then chances are you're probably not going to lose weight or get the benefits from the ketones that we know heal the brain, turn off bad genes, all this great stuff. Again, Thomas Seyfried in his book, who I mentioned already, talks about restriction. If your glucose isn't dropping, one of the things to look at, obviously too much eating too many carbs, right? But those are the obvious things, but the need for more restriction. Now, when we say that word, I think in our minds we say, eating less, eating less. But we know that the problem with eating less is we lower our metabolism, then we need to eat less. And now all of a sudden you're surviving on 400 or 500 calories getting fat. That doesn't work. So how we create the restriction is not by eating less. It's what, girls?
Less often.
That's why intermittent fasting.
In my head, Dr. Pompa.
I know, right? That's why intermittent fasting with ketosis, I think, is a magic bullet there. Because you automatically are getting ways to restrict the glucoses. That's why we look at it, right? As the glucose going down, you're getting the rise in ketones. Fasting rises ketones. That's it. So you're getting higher ketones and you're getting lower glucose. Adding intermittent fasting with ketosis, I think, is the magic.
Mm-hmm. And what about adding in kind of those, carbs when you're into that as well, with kind of the carb cycling, where even if you're kind of following a ketogenic diet, adding in those higher carb days with the mix of intermittent fasting, that can kind of be a triple punch too, because you can get a lot of the different benefits from the adaptation principle as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look, and we did a show on diet variation, right? AKA feast famine cycles. I believe when you're in this state, to do a day or two or three when you go dinner to dinner, meal to meal, 23 hours, 24 hours of fasting, huge benefits from that, especially once you get fat adapted, right? Where your body's used to using fat for energy. And then throwing in these feast days or high carb days. So a day where you just eat more often, and days where you eat high carbs. Simply put, it can remind the body it's not starving. Therefore, hormonal changes take place, adaptation occurs, and now your body feels free to continue burning fat. Otherwise, if it feels threatened, because this is the only fuel source that I'm able to use, fat now, because I'm in this ketotic state, it will start to hold on to it. It will be very clever of ways to slow down your fat metabolism. So how do we reignite the fire? Is we use the fuel. And the analogy I like to give is, if it was a hard winter and you only had so much wood, as your wood runs out, you're looking at your wood supply going, it's running out. Are you going to burn less fires, less hot fires? Of course. You're smart. You want your wood less, so you become very conservative with the wood, right? But if someone called you and said, oh, I'll bring over, I have tons of wood, and they loaded your garage up with a ton of wood, guess what you're going to do? I'm going to burn more fire. I'm going to burn wood like crazy because you have more. That's what your body does. And then there's something else that happens in a long, when people are in ketosis long. What happens is the insulin can get very low. Insulin, one of its jobs that people don't understand is that one of its jobs is to tell the liver to not make glucose. So as insulin rises, it'll shut down gluconeogenesis, meaning the process of glucose in the liver. So think about it. If your glucose insulin gets really low because you've been in ketosis for a long time, then what can happen is your liver can start producing glucose because the insulin's not there to shut it down. We know that occurs too. Bottom line is, these feast days matched with famine days, are brilliant. And we're just emulating our ancestors and what our DNA is set up to do. Feast, famine, hormone optimization occurs, fat burning stays intact. It's magic. We call it diet variation.
Mm-hmm. And the feast days are so fun, and they make it sustainable too, where you're not always just eating in this short feeding window and eating low carb all the time. It really makes it enjoyable and sustainable, and you can plan these really fun, exciting meals with carbs. And I think it's brilliant, the feast days.
Yeah. Psychologically, I think it's a huge thing for people.
Oh yeah, I love feast days are the best.
Yeah.
You're so fun. All right. So another good one here. I get this a lot. How would a type 2 diabetic implement fasting?
Yeah.
A lot of diabetics out there.
Yeah, exactly. First off, I think that if you did a block fast, you would have to do it, under supervision. I think most people, just because, again, electrolytes can drop, things, be supervised in a block fast if you have a health condition. I mean, if you're healthy, I think anyone can fast, but, be cautious of the electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium. People start getting cramps, it's magnesium. And by the way, when you enter into ketosis, be cautious of magnesium and potassium. Your body loses a lot of water because it's losing the stored glycogen, and you lose electrolytes. So that's a very, very big caution. And that's the case with fasting as well. So, you know, what was the question? I forgot what the...
With type 2 diabetics,
so you have to be very cautious, right? I think you should do it within supervision. We do, you know, intermittent fasting is daily intermittent fasting is a better place to start. But again, measure your glucose. You know, look at what your ketones and glucose are doing to determine the length of that fast. You know, we talk about, you know, maybe using some exogenous ketones for diabetics to get a longer fast. You know, it can help them control their glucose. That means exogenous ketones are taking actual ketones. So we can take actual ketones and actually kind of get a benefit too. But I just met with a scientist last night, a biochemist, who said, Dan, you're right. We know that if you take beta hydroxybutyrate by itself and spike up the level, number one, it doesn't last but more than an hour. It'll shut down fat burning. But so he has a patent on one it lasts longer, so it doesn't shut down fat burning, but that's a long story. But the point is again, you have to need supervision even for that. So.
Yeah. And just with the point on potassium and magnesium, I know you like the supplement on PTM from Systemic Formulas, right? To support the proper potassium and magnesium ratio while fasting and in ketosis, that can be a helpful support, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would take some extra magnesium with that. So magnesium malate, citrate, something like that as well. MIN, it's a good multivitamin, multi-mineral, I'm sorry, that Systemic sells on our website. That really, it's a magnesium, and it's highest in magnesium. But yeah, I mean, you want to support the minerals.
Right. Yeah, that was key. That was another question we get a lot. So, and I get this question too, which is typically not for most Americans who are on kind of the overweight end of the spectrum, but people who, you know, are afraid to lose weight, but they want some of the fasting benefits. Is it kind of a scary or maybe wrong thing to do with someone who's thin? Should they be fasting?
That's a great question, because there's a lot of myths about fasting, and that's one of them. That I'm going to lose muscle. Fact is, you don't. You can lose the appearance, or have the appearance of losing muscle, because you're losing glycogen in the muscle, and a lot of the fat burns out without it. But immediately, as soon as you start eating, that immediately comes back. So the body spares protein. It goes into a protein sparing mode. And we know fasting daily, bodybuilders are actually doing this to actually maximize their muscle growth. So, you know, we know that there's a myth there. So you get many of these clients that I have that have scleroderma and other severe autoimmune cases, they're under 100 pounds. Fasting is the only way to actually get them to their gut to, you know, basically heal again and, you know, reduce the inflammation to where they can actually assimilate and actually gain weight. But typically, they'll still lose 5 or 6 pounds because you're losing glycogen and water, but they're not losing muscle. They're not losing, and then it gives them an opportunity to gain weight. So most people gain weight, muscle weight, good weight after a fast that are very light. So you can fast. Now, let's say a cancer person is in this ketotic state, you know, where their body's eating itself, cachexia, and, you know, where literally it's eating the muscle. That, again, a health professional would have to determine, because in those cases, I would say fasting would not be good. It could accelerate that process for other hormonal reasons that are, you know, too deep to get into here.
Yeah, very important distinction with the fasting, but yeah, common myth that, you know, you can't fast if you're thin. So it's a really important point, and that's kind of a natural transition too. I know, Aaron, you have a lot of great questions and kind of things you'd like to share from an athlete's perspective on fasting, gaining weight, timing, resistance training. Let's dig into that.
Yeah, so many questions. For those who are a little bit more on the advanced side that are working out and training really hard, I do intermittent fasting, but there's some days, like, I love to work out in the morning, right, at 6 a.m. and it's high intensity with weights, and I feel so good afterwards. But you know, my eating window isn't until 12 to 6. Like, let's say I've got a dinner meeting at 6. So I'm really trying to hold out till 6 p.m. You know, what's some tips you could do? Because do you hold out? Can it be damaging if you hold out that long? I know waiting an hour after workout is good, but holding out too long, can it be, you know, dangerous? Or, you know, what are the tips? What do you recommend?
Yeah, well, you know what? I would tell you to test. I would say, what's your doing? If your glucose is starting to rise without eating, then I would say, yeah, you needed to eat ahead of that. I think you're right. Waiting at least an hour or two after a workout's good. You kind of ride out that growth hormone spike, testosterone spike, benefit from the hormones. After that, it's going to be different for everybody. How fat efficient are you? How fat adapted are you? There's no doubt, and I think some days it's a little different for me. Days that we have higher cortisol, for example, you may not be able to go longer without eating. Maybe you're more stressed out the last few days. All of a sudden, you're starving at 9 o'clock. You worked out at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., you're starving. I would tell you to eat. Now, again, that's someone who's done this a while. If you just started, you're going to be hungry all the time. You're not very fat adapted. But for someone like you, Aaron, if you got hungry at 9 a.m. after a 6 a.m. workout, I would tell you to eat. Even if your last meal was 6. So that day, big deal. You had a feast day. Listen to your body. You're to that point where you listen to your body. There's days I forget to eat. I just end up eating one meal and I didn't even try. And then there's days where I'm like, man, I'm hungry today. And I promise you, and I've tested it. I run in and test my glucose. My glucose is rising. Something, I don't know what it was. I mean, we can guess stress or whatever it is, but my body's demanding more food. I listen to it. So I don't always do what I think is, I have planned. Some days I eat earlier and I eat more.
Yeah. And I know how that is because sorry, I'm getting a little echo. I know how that is because, as an athlete, you want to just do exactly by the book. And some days you just have to just like shift your window, be easy about it, just go into the next day. Or if I end up eating all day, I'm like, well, there's my feast day. I'll just fast tomorrow, or just adjust as you go, but for someone, that's new to it, I think you get kind of stressed out as like, oh no, I'm breaking my window. And, you just want to be on par with everything. And that's the key, is that it's not just shift and work around it. And here's another question too, with weight training. And let's say you do a dinner to dinner fast where you're not eating for 24 hours. And then let's say you can make it through, you work out right before your feast. And you're supposed to be getting let's say 60 grams of protein in your body if you're weight training, but that's a lot of protein all at once. So how do we work with that?
I think that's a good idea. First of all, two things we don't know. When you're intermittent fasting and you're fat adapted, the rules are different. And I gave you the analogy before of look, science and physics is different in outer space than it is on Earth, right? Einstein struggled to get people to understand that. You can't apply the same physics here as you are up there. But we try to. Well, it's the same thing. When you're intermittent fasting, you're in ketosis, you're doing diet variation, there's a different physiology, there's a different physics, there's different rules that apply. And we don't even know all the answers, right? So the point is I think in what I've seen is in an intermittent fasting state, ketotic state, you can actually ingest more protein per meal and actually get away with it. Look, how do I know this? When I went to Africa, I saw it. I mean, they ate one meal a day, but man, they were ingesting a heck of a lot of protein. These people were disease-free. So it shows me that something occurred, that the body was able to take higher amounts of protein and utilize it. The typical American can't use more than 15, 20 grams of protein per meal. But that's applying physics on Earth. Right. We're not applying that. When you're intermittent fasting, the hormones change. Everything changes. So I believe that shifts occur that we could take in more protein at once. Number two is maybe you don't need as much protein at all because of the hormone optimization. So maybe you can heal with much less protein. So two things there to consider. I would just eat a normal meal in those days, and the physics is different. Physiology is different.
No, that's a great way to explain it. That's a huge help for somebody like me, and I'm sure all of our viewers like me. But another question is, in the past, I've had, adrenal fatigue and from working out too hard or working too hard, as we know. And when you do intermittent fasting and you push pretty hard on a fasted state and you work out, should you, from an adrenal standpoint, should you have a little bit of food right before you work out? Or, what's kind of your advice on that?
I think if you have food before you work out, you're distracting your body. It takes a lot of energy to break down food, So I think that no matter what, having some food before workout can be distractive. Now you can wait 2 hours, it's more through that digestive stage. I think there's magic in working out in a fasted state. With adrenal insufficiency, we always get this question, it's like, can they intermittent fast? The answer is yes, we do it all the time. Do they need more electrolyte support? Yes. Do they need, more, perhaps adrenal support? Yes. But again, I would test them, their glucose and ketones, see what's happening, and just shorten their window perhaps, right? Maybe they're the ones that do a little bit better with a little bit of fat support, but again, they can fast. They just may not be able to fast as long. But let me tell you something, put them into a block fast, adrenal deficient people, they make it and they get more efficient. Bad cells die. So
yeah, I noticed that while I was doing my block fast. Yeah, definitely noticed the change. And on a side note too, I actually was thinking about doing a fitness competition next year, like in a year from now, doing intermittent fasting, doing ketosis, doing it healthy, because I know a lot of women can destroy their bodies and hormones doing it the kind of 1980s style. And so I want to measure where I'm at and kind of document it all. Maybe we could do a podcast in a year and know that it can be done, doing it healthy and doing it right and not destroying yourself. And it'd be more of the, not the hardcore, just more of the I guess the bikini style competition where it's like leaner muscle. But I want to do it just to see how far I can push myself and with this and know that it can be done,
Yeah. Listen, I just did, my son went to Bali and I had him interview, he was Mr. Universe Natural. I don't remember the years, 2005, and there's a couple other ones. And he did the old bodybuilding style. And Komang, that's his name, he's from Bali, and we're going to interview him here on the show. Daniel did an amazing interview with him, which we'll play as part of our interview. And he asked him great questions. He asked him about, because he came from the 5,000-6,000 calories a day that bodybuilders are trying to get or more. And he was like, no, after I learned, from your dad, I mean, he watches this show, he eats like 1,200 to 1,500 calories a day now. Way less. Physics is different on Earth, So, and yet he's maintaining his, the guy's really big and muscular. He's maintaining it. And his protein came down, way down. All these things, and he was eating 5-6 meals a day. Now he's eating 1 or 2. So all these things that he thought were right. And Daniel in the interview pulls out that, he said were wrong. He was aging prematurely. He started feeling his energy go down. The bodybuilding, that mentality in those competitions that you're going to run into is absolutely damaging. No doubt. You should do it this way because, you'll love the interview with Komang, because there's another way that doesn't seem right to man, but it is. 180-degree principles.
180, busting the myths. Yep, love it.
Solution, right? 180.
Awesome. That's all the questions I had so far.
Awesome. Great. Well, so many great questions, and oh my gosh, well. And I think it's just kind of an important concept too, when we're learning through this, especially some of us who are in the beginning, we want to follow the rules and we want to learn these kind of strategies to begin implementing. But for those of us who have been doing this for years too, I think it does help to just relax and not be so legalistic about it. But once we are fat adapted, to really be intuitive, to tune into our bodies and what they're telling us, when they're telling us to eat. If we're hungry, we can eat, we can trust our bodies after a while. So I think that was just kind of refreshing and relaxing to me too, especially in the beginning when I got a little bit too caught up in being too strict with the fasting and with the diet, but to kind of loosen up and to tune into the body. I think it's a really important reminder for all of us who are just kind of really deep into this world.
Yeah, and I want to just end on one more point, because I just came back from 2 different conferences. One was Low Carb USA, where there's these diehard, people in ketosis, all the time. And I don't know that they appreciated my message that coming out is important and there's so many different benefits, right? And they had a lot of excuses or reasons why they thought that wasn't good, but yet it violates everything that I'm looking at in the science, to stay in these locked-in zones, and it violates ancient cultures that we're moving in and out of fasting and famine states and moving in and out of ketosis. Our DNA is set up for that, and we know the magic is in the variation, right? This is a tool, ketosis and intermittent fasting. So, one thing I have to say, I ran into a lot of people that were not able to be in ketosis. They weren't getting the results. They weren't able, they had all these other sets of symptoms that you know that they're toxins. Toxins drive cellular inflammation. They drive mitochondria that don't work right, make it very simple, and it creates problems in everything that we're talking about. If that's you and you're watching it, you have neurotoxic issues that need to be addressed. Remember, this is put together in a multi-therapeutic approach. We do these ancient strategies that we discussed today, right? But we're detoxing at the cellular level. It's huge today. That's why many of you are going, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. Toxic. That's the thing. You know, true cellular detox is critical. And then, of course, we're doing this work to turn off these genes that have been turned on, because that's messed up in people. That's the answer today, you know, and that's what we teach.
Amen. Great way to end it. The multi-therapeutic approach. It's an incredible solution to so many conditions out there that where you're doing everything, you're not getting results. There's a lot of puzzle pieces that are in the multi-therapeutic approach that really, really do realize real and sustainable results for so many people. So amazing way to end it. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining the show. Thank you, Dr. Pompa. Anything you guys want to close with before we close out the show?
Can we do another one sometime later?
No, honestly, we probably need to, because I always say each show creates other questions. So I think with a topic as large as this, I think that, you know, we should do another show on fasting, because, you know, I'm sure we didn't cover all the questions. So that's up to Meredith. She'll set that up.
All right.
I sure will. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Dr. Pompa. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We wouldn't be here without you guys. So have an amazing weekend. Keep sending in your wonderful questions, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.